s'il vous plaît, prenez place. Il y a assez de place, je pense, pour tout le monde et vous pouvez vous approcher un peu plus par ici, si vous voulez. Merci tout d'abord à vous d'avoir choisi le Club suisse de la presse pour cet événement important. Merci à ceux qui sont présents dans la salle. Nous sommes ici aujourd'hui pour pas seulement une conférence de presse, c'est un événement, tout simplement, un événement important. Donc je vais juste vous donner l'ordre des choses. D'abord, nous aurons, comme d'habitude, les présentations, parce qu'il y aura 3 faites par nos invités. Après quoi, nous avons les questions-réponses, après une signature, après une réception. Donc c'est une belle journée, une journée importante. Soyez les bienvenus au Club suisse de la presse. Maintenant, pour la présentation de nos invités, je donne la parole à Ricardo Teixeira, qui va nous présenter les invités, s'il vous plaît.
Good afternoon. So it is a great pleasure to introduce today's speakers. In speaking order, Ms. Inger Andersen, Director General of IUCN, on your left. Jane Smart, Global Director of IUCN's Biodiversity Conservation Group, on Madame President's right, excuse me. And Monsieur Didier Leroy, Executive Vice President of Toyota Motor Corporation, to Ms. Andersen's left. Just to repeat very briefly in English the running of today's events, our speakers will each make a brief announcement. We will then have some time for question and answer, and this will be followed by a short signing ceremony and an informal lunch upstairs, to which, of course, you're all invited. Thank you very much, and if I could, at this point, hand over to Inger Andersen.
Thank you very much indeed, first of all, to the president of the Swiss Press Club here in Geneva, as well as to Mr. Didier Leroy, who is the executive vice president of Toyota Motor Corporation, as we just heard. I am extremely pleased to be announcing today, together with Mr. Leroy, that we have established a partnership with Toyota, with which IUCN will work, that will help boost our work to assess the planet's precious species. And here maybe it's important to say that the Toyota Motor Corporation will be funding the assessment of a new 28,000 species. This is that we can add to our red list, the red list of threatened species over the next 5 years. I want you to see that this is monumental and fundamental. In 2016 alone, Toyota will be providing $1.2 million to IUCN. And doing this work, these 28,000 new species that we will assess to assess their degree of threat, this will increase our knowledge by 30% of the state of biodiversity. So today we have assessed some 80,000 species. By adding this, we are making a massive step forward. And that is important when we look at the fragility of our planet. So Toyota's generosity here will double the number of assessed species by 2020 to 160,000 species assessed. And so that's massive. And one particular area that is really key to mention is the area that deals with food-related species. Here, Toyota's funding will be especially important. We've seen just last year the signing of the Sustainable Development Goals. I want to remind you of Goal 2, which deals with zero hunger, the zero hunger goal. Well, we need to understand that hunger obviously is driven by lack and understanding of agriculture and sustainable agriculture. We need to understand that in many cases, species losses are caused by agricultural activity. So assessing these species and having understanding of what they are under threat is important. Ladies and gentlemen, it is over 66 million years ago that we saw the 5th mass extinction. That's when dinosaurs were still on this good earth. We are today living in the 6th mass extinction, but unlike previous mass extinction, this extinction crisis is caused by human beings. And so it is also in our hand to make change. It is in our hand to stop that extinction and to make a shift. Today we are losing species 1,000 times natural extinction rates. This is something that is in our hand. And with Toyota stepping up and stepping up big in this manner, we have a chance now to stop that clock, to ensure that that barometer of life, the red list, is better enabled to help policymakers as well as conservationists to do the right thing. There's never been a more important time to have a better understanding of how species and ecology play together for sustainability and for long-term safety of our planet. Because our planet is at the crossroads, and today climate change, habitat loss, wildlife trafficking are just some of the challenges that we face. So we have a window of opportunity to act. We urgently need this knowledge and these 28,000 additional species that we will be able to assess thanks to Toyota, will be able to put this knowledge at the world's disposal so that that barometer of life can really help us make our world sustainable. So let me now hand over to Dr. Jane Smart, who is our Global Director at IUCN's Biodiversity Conservation Group and who also oversees the work of the biodiversity, of the Red List, the IUCN Red List. Over to you, Jane.
Thank you very much, Inger. Good afternoon, colleagues. As Inger mentioned, I'm Global Director of IUCN's Biodiversity Conservation Group. I'm really thrilled to be here at the beginning of this new partnership between IUCN and the Toyota Motor Corporation. Just to mention in a little bit more detail some of the points that Inger has already discussed. Our planet is facing an extinction crisis, and what's really serious is that it's a human-induced crisis. So to protect the rich diversity on which all of our lives depend on, we need knowledge. If you like, with any serious challenge, we need good intelligence, and that's what the Red List is all about. Quite simply, it's the world's most comprehensive information source on the global conservation status of animal, plant, and fungi wild species. We've already assessed 80,000 species, but it's not enough, quite frankly. And we've already found that 23,000 are threatened with extinction. That's a scary figure, but we still need to know more. We urgently need to know more because, in a sense, what we have is the tip of the iceberg only when you consider that 1.8 million species have been named. Now, we can't assess all of those. It would be extremely difficult to do that. But we urgently need to assess more of them to get an overall picture of what's going on out there. And what we've decided to do through this new partnership with the Toyota Motor Corporation is look at those which are absolutely essential to our food security in particular. So in so doing, we aim to double the number of species we've assessed to 160,000 by 2020. So that is going to give us what we are calling a barometer of life. It's going to give us a much better picture, a more complete picture of what is going on in relation to the world's wild species. It's going to give us the intelligence, as I say, to catalyze the action we need to get the change we need to see in the world. So from knowledge, we can get action. Without that knowledge, we don't have the scientifically underpinned action. So maybe some of you are hungry right now. I hope not too hungry. Lunch is coming. But let's think about food for a minute. 80% of our calorie intake is coming from just 12 dominant agricultural crop species. That's quite a thought when you think about it. And 50% of those calories are coming from 3 big grasses: wheat, maize, and rice. Now, as you all know, and it's happening right now, it's not down the road, and we are at that crossroads that Inger mentioned, the climate is changing. It's getting hotter in places, colder in places, wetter, drier. The climate is totally changing, and plants react to that, of course, and our crops are reacting to that. And this means that in many parts of the world, crops are failing with the changing climate. What can we do about that? Well, the key is in the crop-wild relatives. Those relatives of the crops that we now grow in agriculture still exist out there in the wild. But here's the thing, we don't know exactly where. We don't know what threats they're facing themselves, so we need to find out. Now, it's the genes from these crop-wild relatives that we can use with breeding techniques to cross with the agricultural crops to make them more resistant to changing climates in the future. Now, this is quite a complicated story to tell, but it's a story we must tell. when you think about our dominance on those crop species. So what the Red List conservation status work will do is tell us where they are, what threats they face, and what we can do to actually save them. Now, what I think is rather wonderful is that the name Toyota actually means plentiful rice field. And I thought this was a fantastic match. You know, many rice wild relatives grow in Japan, and of course rice grows in Japan, and Japan cuisine is famous for being wonderful and for having some delicious rice. So we have decided to focus on wild rice species, wild wheat species, other crop wild relatives, to try and bring home to the world the importance of these species to our livelihoods. And just this morning, the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew announced a new unit to assess plant species. And I think this underscores the work that we'll all be doing in partnership as the world starts to appreciate how important plants are as the basis of our lives and livelihoods. Turning to a different kind of food, fish, we'll also be focusing on marine fish. We'll be assessing sardines, pilchards, and sole species, because they are a food source for billions, and also a source of livelihoods for billions in terms of the processing and catching them. That's 200 million people worldwide, depending on fisheries for jobs. We'll also be, over the 5 years, focusing on other economically important plants, fungi. Never forget the fungi. We wouldn't be here without the fungi. Freshwater fish, reptiles, and invertebrates such as dragonflies. And we will also upgrade the Red List website, the web platform, because at the moment 3.5 million people a year are visiting the Red List website. We want to make it easier for them to find the information they need. So just a few words about the Environmental Challenge 2050. So the vision presented by the Toyota Motor Corporation, we think, is quite amazing, and it's highlighted behind you on those panels there. It's very ambitious, but having looked into it, it's not just an ambitious vision. There are real concrete plans to make it a reality. And you know what? I'm not known for being easily fooled by greenwash, I would say. And I've been working in this game for about 30 years. And I've really looked into this, and I have to say that I'm really impressed by what Toyota is doing. Now, of course, being a car manufacturer, Toyota is very, very concerned about CO2 emissions. And that's something, of course, that links to climate change. But here's the thing, that conserving biodiversity is linked to climate change. So climate change and biodiversity are two sides of the same coin. And this is something we think, Toyota and IUCN, the world needs to think about a lot more. Toyota gets this, we get this. And I just want to explain this a little bit more. If we destroy habitats such as woodlands and peatlands and even wetlands and drylands, we are stopping the ability of those ecosystems, those habitats, to absorb the carbon dioxide that is in the air right now, that we are putting into the atmosphere. If we keep them where they are, they can carry on doing that job of sequestering the greenhouse gases. So protecting biodiversity is going hand in hand with ameliorating climate change. And that's one key message that I think we have for you. So all parts of this new 2050 action plan are impressive, we think. So a target of a 90% reduction of carbon dioxide emissions by 2050 is amazing. On top of that, though, Toyota are also looking at reducing CO2 emissions in the making of their cars and in the disposal of the cars. In fact, across the whole supply chain, through the whole product life cycle, and even in their production plants. They have some very interesting new technology which is minimizing and optimizing water usage, another key environmental challenge. And they've done lots of very, very interesting things on the whole subject of recycling, which they're now rolling out. In terms of their challenge number 6, which is all about establishing a society in harmony with nature, which we think is a great phrase, Toyota is taking this leadership role to avoid destroying any habitat in their operations as well, which obviously we're very, very impressed by at IUCN. So this generous grant to help us assess 28,000 species is very welcome. We're very proud of our link with this corporation who is doing so much to take on significant environmental challenges. We hope that the leadership shown by Toyota will actually be a very, very good example to other companies. We really hope that, because maybe If everybody started to emulate Toyota, we really would have a society in harmony with nature by 2050. Thank you.
Oops. Okay, thank you, Dr. Smart, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Didier Leroy. I'm Executive Vice President of Toyota Motor Corporation. And let me first thank the reporter and journalist for being here today with us. And also, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the international organizations and NGOs for sparing your precious time to attend this specific announcement today. You know, many people outside of Japan, including sometimes some of your colleagues, journalists, often assume that Toyota is based in Tokyo. But it's not at all the case. In fact, our company is based in Aichi Prefecture near Nagoya. And Aichi Prefecture is originally a very rural agricultural province, and our corporate values are rooted in the rural history of our company. Aichi Prefecture is also the place where, in 2010, the United Nations Convention of Biological Diversity set out its strategic plan for 2020. And these plans included the goal to address the underlying causes of biodiversity loss by mainstreaming biodiversity across government and society. And this is very fitting, but to be honest, it is a coincidence. In fact, there are many additional reasons for Toyota to support the IUCN and its effort to identify the species that are critical to global biodiversity. Since its foundation, Toyota has addressed environmental issues as a key challenge, with the idea that our company's action should contribute to the development of a sustainable society. This is what led us in the 1990s to plan for mobility in the 21st century. We realized that we needed to create environmental friendly vehicles and sell them on a large scale to have a true beneficial impact on the environment. This initiative gave birth to the famous Toyota Prius, and now to the 8.5 million hybrid vehicles we have sold until today, saving more than 60 million tons of CO2. 20 years later, we are aiming for a zero-emission future by launching now the first mass-produced hydrogen fuel cell sedan, the Mirai. And probably you know, but the meaning of Mirai in Japanese means future. We strongly believe in the needs to diversify energy sources and lower our dependence on fossil fuels. We are thinking that hydrogen has a big role to play to achieve this goal. Of course, today, this is still we still have a very limited hydrogen infrastructure. We know this is just the beginning, but we believe that it's our responsibility to take the lead now for a better future. And when it comes to protecting our planet, we know that it will also take time to achieve the target the world needs to reach, and the various aspects are completely interlinked. In October last year, we announced the Toyota Environmental Challenge 2050, and you have the 6 big challenges on the rear part of this room. Of course, as a car maker, we should focus on global warming and air pollution. And to this end, our first 3 challenges are about minimizing our impact. But that's not enough. We also want to have a net positive impact, meaning we want to create value for society beyond providing clean mobility. So we in fact decided to add 3 more challenges that are focused on resources which are important to the world. Through what we call challenge number 6, which is we aim to establish a future society in harmony with nature. And this is why we are here today side by side with Toyota Toyota has decided to help IUCN inventory to species that are important to biodiversity and to global food supply. As Director General Andersen and Dr. Smart explained, the global environment remains in a critical situation. And it is now, in fact, if we didn't start now, we will never be able to have the impact by the time we need to. And we must admit that in this area, sometimes when we are just talking about car, in this area, sardine, sole, and wild rice plants are more important than just cars. Despite the various diversity activities to achieve the Aichi Biodiversity Target 2020, we are currently in a tight spot and risk not being able to achieve the target. This brings me to the second reason why we are here today. When we looked at the IUCN's red list, it's really spoke to us at Toyota. We, as a company, we are a fact-based, data-driven company. And in fact, I joined Toyota in 1998 because I really wanted to understand why. It was a different and successful company, and especially in manufacturing area, which was my area of responsibility at this time. And in fact, to make high-quality cars, our obsession is to identify problems, to quantify the gap, to find a solution to close that gap systematically. At Toyota, we often said, if you don't have a problem, you have a real problem. We also believe in checking the facts right where that are happening in order to grasp the correct picture of what is happening, in our case, on the shop floor. In Japanese, we call that Getching and Butsu. Assessing the gap is exactly what IUCN has been doing with the red list. Without the knowledge of this barometer of life, it would be impossible for other NGOs, government, and society to protect and restore biodiversity. We want to be a small part of that effort. In 2016, we will provide a grant for this project, and we will continue supporting the organization at similar levels for the next 5 years. This should enable the IUCN to increase the numbers of species in their assessment by, as it was explained, 28,000, bringing them significantly close to the gap and the initial target of 160,000 on the list by 2020. And we will not stop there. Furthermore, we will consider launching other nature conservation projects around the world in collaboration with potentially other international organizations and NGOs. And through the work of IUCN and our collaboration on biodiversity, we hope that the world will one day become again a plentiful rice field again, as the name of and the meaning of the name of Toyota. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup. Maintenant, la salle donc, est à vous. La parole est à la salle. J'aimerais juste que vous présentez avant de poser vos questions. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Oui.
Yes, hello, Frédéric Durand with NHK Japanese Public TV. You mentioned that the focus of this program will be on food staples, and I mean I understand that getting more knowledge on assessing them is crucial. But how can you define? I mean, in how long does it take once you have knowledge till the time you really have a change in the way either we produce, I mean, in agricultural work, or really, I mean, getting knowledge is one thing, but then to impact really on the world, how long a time span do you foresee? Thank you.
Thanks very much for the question. So with the knowledge comes a map, and it comes with information about all the threats, and it also comes with information on what we need to do to conserve the species that's being assessed. So once that knowledge is on the website, it's completely public. And what we then do is, through our policy work, and of course through our communication work, such as events like this, we get that knowledge out there to people who can make a difference. And for IUCN, that's our whole network of scientists, of member organizations, and we have government members as well, who can all hopefully take the action. Now, admittedly, we then have to push that message out through our policy work to try and remind governments of the Sustainable Development Goal number 2.5, which calls on them to make sure that our agriculture is shored up for the future. So it is a stepwise process, but I think the point I would make is that without that initial piece of intelligence, you can't do the rest. So that's, I hope, that the answer to your question.
Oui. D'autres questions? Oui.
Thank you. Edward Girardet, I'm of the Essential Edge and the new Global Geneva Magazine project. A question for Toyota, for Mr. Leroy. I'm just wondering, whenever you go to, to the World Economic Forum, there's a lot of debate as to how involved companies should become in philanthropy. And by the way, I'm just wondering, do you describe this as philanthropy, or do you have another word for it? Is this corporate engagement? And so, I'll leave that up to you. But secondly, very often at debates, say at the World Economic Forum, there's always a lot of concern of, should companies be using shareholder money to support initiatives outside the company for society at large. I'm just wondering how you, yourself, when you have discussions with other corporations about what you're doing with private-public sector partnerships, do you find there's a lot of resistance, skepticism? How do you find it?
You're right. We got very often the question about why are you doing this kind of things? Why are you talking about 2050 or some other thing like this? But frankly speaking, let's give me the answer based on my personal experience when I started to join Toyota. When I started to join Toyota, it was in the pure manufacturing activity. And I was quite surprised to see that when we were talking about mid and long term, we were talking about 20 years. When sometimes in some other company, when we are talking about the long term, we are talking about 5 years. So in Toyota, we are really focusing on how can we develop the company and what is the meaning of the company for their, of course, global business as we are doing, with a huge respect for our shareholder, as you said before. But at the same time, we have some duty, we have some clear responsibility for the global society, because we are a global company. And based on that, one of the big challenges we have is how can we contribute to the global society. We don't want to take the full benefit for the short term without thinking about what will happen tomorrow, and just let's try to maximize what can happen and what we can get now. We are really thinking about the long term. And you're right, for many other companies, it's sometimes a little bit difficult to understand that. But when you understand the company culture and the Toyota culture based on this long history, philosophy, the founder of the company, the way that he wanted to develop and why he decided to develop automotive business within Japan, I can secure the fact that this is very clear. It doesn't matter if you are Japanese or not. Everybody in the world can easily understand that it's really part of the DNA of the company, and it's not any other strategy like communication or let's talk about ads about something. Not at all. It's really part of the DNA of the company, and it's really well understood also by the shareholder when we have some deep discussion, for example, during the shareholder meeting. Thank you.
S'il vous plaît.
Bertrand de Montmolin, Chair of the IUCN Swiss National Committee and also member of the IUCN SSC Plant Subcommittee. I have a question about the 28,000 new species that will be assessed with the help of Toyota Motor Corporation. IUCN also try to focus its efforts in order to assess more neglected taxonomic groups like plants, but not only wild crops relatives, fungi or invertebrates. As species are not only important if they have a direct link with human needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertrand. Absolutely. I think, as you know very well, the Red List underrepresents species from the marine realm and the freshwater realm. And plants are a bit of a gap, and the fungi and the invertebrates are a bit of a gap. So actually, that's been our precise intention, to fill those gaps through the marine fish that I mentioned, and also we were looking at freshwater fish as well, agar woods and ginger species, which are important sort of for a spice, everybody knows that, but also for health reasons and cultural reasons. And actually provide some ecosystem services, because you see them planted as hedges in developing countries. So absolutely, yes, this has been the whole intent. I mean, you know very well that we all love furry mammals, but they've been assessed already. They're on the Red List. The birds have been assessed 5 times, and some species have not been assessed at all. So those are the big knowledge gaps where we need more knowledge and intelligence. Thanks.
Have you more questions? Yes, please.
Pascaline Minet du journal Le Temps. Is it the first time that IUCN makes such a kind of partnership with a private company? And what are the other funding sources of IUCN? Thank you.
IUCN has a long history of working with a variety of companies, although not in this manner. But we have certainly had other partnerships with other companies outside the Red List, whether it be in specific protected area management, whether it be in water management in particular places across the world, or whether it be working with companies that were not the motor industry that have sought to reduce their footprint. The issue that we're looking at here is unique because it is a long, deep partnership, as you've heard from the speakers, that seeks to, as Mr. Leroy explained, identify those gaps that are clear to us scientifically speaking, and be able to bring to the world that knowledge that is key for conservation. And so that uniqueness of this is not a one-off, it's a deeper 5-year engagement with clear goals, which we will then be able to check off on the kind of species that Dr. Smart outlined, and the kind of groups of species that she outlined. And that is important, not just for the humankind and the kind of sustenance and food security and goal 2 of the SDG, but also very much important for the very integrity of those ecosystems. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. So, d'autres questions? De toute façon, vous aurez la possibilité encore de poser des questions et de discuter avec nos invités après la signature. Maintenant, j'aimerais vous demander à nos invités de signer d'abord notre livre d'or, le livre d'or de Club Suisse de la Presse, s'il vous plaît. Et puis nous avons un petit cadeau pour vous, c'est le dessin pour la paix. Merci beaucoup. Vous avez la parole.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard, this partnership between IUCN and Toyota Motor Corporation means that the next 5 years will represent a step change in how we understand the state of biodiversity on this planet. By 2021, we should know some 30% more about the extinction risk to the world's species than we know now. To celebrate this, I would like to invite the Director General, Inger Andersen, and Monsieur Didier Leroy to move toward the signing table for the signing ceremony. Everyone is now invited upstairs for an informal lunch and a drink. So just inside the main house as you exit to the left. Thank you very much, everyone, for attendance.